Hi, so in a recent video I showed you how to make this little storage caddy using fabric and felt for the lining. In today's video I'm going to show you how to do an alternative caddy if you want to use fabric for both the inside and the outside. So just to save some time, I've prepared my fabrics already. So I've got a piece of fabric here that is 10 inches by 18 inches, and this is going to be my outer fabric. I've got a piece of white fabric again, which is 10 inches by 18, but on the back of this piece I have used a piece of wadding or batting, and I've just temporarily stuck this down to the white fabric using a fabric adhesive. So this is minimal supplies and a really simple and easy to do project. This one is going to be bigger than this one as well. So the first thing you need to do is put the right sides of your fabrics together on both pieces. And then pin or clip. So on the outer fabric, I'm going to sew down both sides and leave the top open. And I'm just using a regular straight stitch on my machine with my regular presser foot. And then on the lining, I'm going to sew down one side, and then on the other side, I'm going to leave a turning gap. So maybe 2 or 3 inches down, and I'm just going to put a mark with, this is a ScanNCut air erasable marker, and I'm just going to make a mark. So on the lining I'm going to sew down one side, and then on the other side I'm going to sew down, stop at this mark, back tack, then take the needle out of the machine, start here, back tack and sew to the bottom. So I'm going to start sewing at the top, sew down to this blue line, back tack and then stop. Then I'm going to come down to the second mark and do the same. So sew, back tack and down to the bottom. And as I said, I've got my needle in the centre position on my regular foot, and I'm just lining up the fabric with the end of the presser foot. So if I sew in this position all the time, all my seams will be the same. So I've sewn and I've just got a gap here which will become the turning gap later on. Now with the opposite side I'm just going to sew straight along. So with my outer fabric, all I need to do with this is sew down both sides. So that's how we're looking so far. Now the next thing I'm going to do is box out the corners, and you can measure up and mark, or if you've watched any of my previous videos, I've cut squares using the ScanNCut. So this is a 1.5 inch square. So the way I'm going to do this, I've got an air erasable pen here. I'm just going to line this 1.5 inch square up with the bottom of the fabric, which is the fold. These are the open tops here, and I'm going to put the square on the sewn seam, not on the end of the fabric, but from the sewn seam. So now I'm just going to draw around my square on all 4 corners. So the 2 bottom corners of the lining and the 2 bottom corners of the outer fabric. So now you just need a good sharp pair of scissors and you're just going to cut these out. So that's how it's looking now. Both corners are taken out of the lining and both corners are taken out of the outer fabric. So you need to put your hand inside one of your sections and open up the seam, and you're going to sew in a straight line straight across. So I'm just going to put a clip in here to hold it in place, and you can open your seams if you want, or you can nest them to one side, it's entirely up to you. And then you're going to do the same on your outer fabric. So open up your seam, and sew. So this is how it's looking, and you're going to sew across here and here and across here and here. So this is what you've got so far. So I'm going to turn the lining right side out and push out the corners. And one thing I forgot to say at the beginning is I've pressed these fabrics before I actually started. So, you know, they shouldn't need much ironing when you get to the end of the project, but, you know, they may do. It just makes your project, I think, gives it a bit more of a polished finish if you press your fabrics before you start. So I've got the lining the right way out and I've got the outer fabric with the wrong sides out. I'm going to put this inside this and line up the bottoms and the side seams. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to line up the side seams of the lining and the outer fabric so that they nest together, and I'm going to push the seams in opposite directions on one fabric to the other, and it doesn't matter which way you do it, just get them lined up. Again, so I'm bringing in the seam of the outer fabric, lining it up with the inside and putting a clip in it to hold it in place. And then I'm just going to put a couple of extra clips holding the 2 lots of fabric together. So I'll put probably one in the middle there and one in the middle here, like so. And then I'm going to sew all the way around. So on my machine I can remove the free arm, which enables me to get this under here easier. If you can't remove the free arm, just put yours on top, keep the bottom bit out of the way and feed it around slowly. So again, I'm just lining up the edge of the fabric with the edge of the presser foot, and I'm just going to sew all the way round. When you get to your seams, just take your time, because obviously you've got quite a bit of bulk. And then just back stitch when you meet up to where you started, and we're nearly finished. So now I'm pulling the inside from the outside, and I'm just going to find where I left the hole in the seam and put my hand in and start to feed this fabric out through the hole. And it will come, just do it a little bit at a time. You don't have to rush, you don't want to rip your stitches, but it will come out bit by bit. So once you've got it all through, push your finger into the corners where you made your box corners to push those out, and the same with the front of the bag. If you can't get your hand all the way in, you know, use the blunt end of your handle of your scissors or something like that, just to so that you can get in and push out your corners. So this is how it's looking now. So we've got the corners all pulled out on both sides, and then you've got this gap which was your turning point. So if you lay it down flat and then just put your fingers in the gap, it kind of wants to fold in on itself. So you can either hand stitch this, or because it's going to be inside in the lining, I'm just going to sew it up on the machine. So I'm just going to put a clip at the end there, because I know that's where the opening ends, and then I'm going to line this up under my foot just past where the opening is, come onto the fabric, and I'm just going to sew very close to the edge, catching in the seam, and then sew off. I'm just sewing very close to the edge, and then I'm just going to put my finger just past, this is the opening and it finishes here, so I'm just going to put my finger just past the opening and sew down and sew off. But I'm going to back tack at the end as I did at the beginning. You just want to close up that seam. So now all as we have to do is push the lining inside the outer fabric. Push your hands inside so you can get your corners pushed out, and then roll over your fabric until you can see just the outside and no lining. I think this is the most fiddly bit of the whole project. and then you can press that, and then again, if you want, you can top stitch around the edge, or you can leave it as it is. I'm just going to cut that thread for a start, and then I think I'm going to top stitch it together. You don't have to do this part, it's entirely up to you. And I'm going to start just before the side seam. And what I'm going to do with this one, I am actually going to move my needle over so that I get fairly close to the seam. I'm just going to take my time going over that seam. And I'm going to take my time with this because I obviously want it to look nice. So I'm just going to sew, sections and stop. Make sure that the fabric's still lying nice as I want it to. When I get to the other seam, I'm going to take my time. I just like to hold the back of the fabric. I'm not pulling it through, but I hold the fabric just to kind of keep it all in place. And then when I meet up with the seam, I'm just going to do a couple of back stitches just to finish it off. And that's it, done. So that is how it's looking now. So that's an alternative way of making one of these storage caddies if you don't want to use felt on the inside. And again, you can leave it like this, or you can fold it over and have some of your lining showing. It's entirely up to you how you want it to look. So again, I hope you like the project. Please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't already do so, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.